Hey everyone, welcome to episode 64 of the Miami Tech Pod. I am Caesar, joined by Brian and Maria this week, and our special guest, Geoffrey Woo. Welcome to the Miami Tech Pod.
Thanks for having me. Awesome to be here.
And for our listeners, Jeff is the co-founder and chairman of Archive, as well as the co-founder and general partner at Anti-Fund. He's had an amazing career in tech and entrepreneurship. And Jeff, why don't you kind of start with the early days? The actual event that really catapulted you into being a founder and entrepreneur, and go from there.
Thank you for the kind intro. I think just going way back, born and raised in Los Angeles. My dad was an entrepreneur, immigrated from Hong Kong, was studying physics at UCLA, and then decided to drop out and help start some of the family business around, first in restaurants and then catching the initial globalization of importing things from China through Hong Kong into America. So I think my dad has an awesome entrepreneurial story. So in terms of seeing what was possible with the American dream, I think looking back, I felt very fortunate to realize that creating something, building a business, hiring people, scaling was just like possible because I saw my family do it. I remember talking to other kids growing up, going to high school or right into college and talking about startups. People were saying like, I kind of know how to be an engineer or a doctor or a professional career, but what does it mean to like start a business? So got a lot of early exposure to the possibility of building a team, making a service, making a product, and kind of venturing out on your own. But I think in parallel, just grew up very much a math science nerd kid, did science fairs, math competitions, found my way to Stanford in computer science. And I think all these factors of Stanford at the time, computer science was not like a hot thing. Went to undergrad between 2007 and 2011. And I think literally the Facebook movie made startups really cool. You could materially see the interest of people. I think human biology, which is the pre-med major, was the biggest major, and then maybe econ, kind of feeding into consulting and investment banking. And then after the Facebook movie came out, computer science literally was the most popular major at Stanford.
I feel like there's probably admissions data on that, right? That sees an actual spike in admissions data after the movie came out.
I'm sure that is there.
Yeah.
And during my time, I was involved with the entrepreneurship club, ended up being the president of the entrepreneurship club at Stanford during my senior year, and had a lot of early exposure to VC. So our student group raised like $400,000 that year to put on events, which is like a lot of money for a student group.
Sure.
We were doing startup competitions and hosting entrepreneur CEOs of big companies. And I think it was like a very optimistic time of our lives where the Instagram founders were a couple of years older than me at Stanford. The Snapchat founders were a year younger. A lot of people were building cool things right out of school. And I think the light for me was, hey, if I'm the entrepreneurship club president, I better be like doing a startup. Otherwise, I feel like a total fraud. So me and a couple of my smartest electrical engineering and CS friends decided to hack on apps together. And we thought, again, very arrogantly, we could build operating systems and routers in CS 144, 140, like these very hard CS classes. We could like for sure make a mobile app. Like how hard could it be to make a consumer application? So one of the problems we wanted to solve at the time was seeing where our friends are on the campus. So we built basically a Marauders map from Harry Potter, or just basically like a campus map for you to see your friends walking around in real time. And obviously went down the rabbit hole of just seeing how sophisticated and complex building a consumer grade, non-buggy app really was, with like a great user experience. Long story short there, ended up applying and getting to Y Combinator right out of school. And the crossroads for me was either do my CS PhD at Princeton, joined Facebook, and that was relatively early at the time. It would have been relatively early at Facebook at the time, or go into the entrepreneurship deep dive. And I think at the time when we applied for Y Combinator, it was 2011, and we were the second batch that had the $170,000 investment that like came with a uncapped safe. So if you remember, like early days YC, it was literally like $20,000 for like a team.
Big money.
Yeah, which is yeah. I mean, it is like I don't want to sound like too snobbish on the money, because I think every dollar matters, especially I think frugalness and scrappiness is really the thing that really matters. But it was like very interesting that now that there's so much capital and so much funding, that Y Combinator at the early times was $20,000, and to me, $170,000 is like new college grad seemed like infinite money. We're like, okay, like we're for sure gonna do that, versus like do a PhD or join Facebook.
To your point on scrappiness, so it forces you to like figure it out without money as a tool to solve every problem, right? Like you got to be creative. You can't just like hire away at every problem. You got to be scrappy and try to figure it out in the early stage. I don't know. I think it's a good thing.
That era though, like YC was still kind of small, right? Like the cohort size in 2011 couldn't have been over 100 companies.
No. It was like 54, and it was like one of the biggest classes ever.
Right.
Paul
Now
Graham was
it's,
still
what,
there.
3,000 or something like that per
Oh yeah, I
class?
mean, it's amazing to. I give a lot of respect to the franchise, the institution that Y Combinator has built, because I don't know anyone left. I mean, not to say in a good or a bad way. It's literally like Paul Graham was still like cooking chili for people and doing like hosting the actual weekly meetups. Sam Altman was a part-time partner. He was still running his company that I think got acquired somewhat time after, I think. So you could tell he was already kind of stepping away from entrepreneurship into investing. Gary Tan wasn't even a partner. He was like a designer in residence at Y Combinator. Like they didn't even let him have a partner title. Like Justin Kahn was like a part-time partner too. And these guys all ended up being kind of legends. So it was, yeah, very cool to like just see the very early raw version of Y Combinator, where like all these like legends in the industry were just, I mean, honestly, like pretty young kind of kids, really, too, just all kind of figuring out their careers.
Yeah, was that around the same era? Was Stripe in your cohort, or had they already gone through?
Stripe was probably a year or two earlier.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah, but
remember
like I
like,
mean the beauty
yeah,
of the cohorts being like in that size range was you got to meet and create real relationships with a lot of peers, whereas now it's probably overwhelming, like from a networking and from a sort of sort of I don't know, fraternization standpoint, right? You know.
yeah, I think it's almost like innovator's dilemma for itself. Like Y Combinator has gotten so successful that like
Mhm.
I think that is the like I think that would be the critique or the feedback. Like I wouldn't go through it again necessarily, because I think the space of entrepreneurship, startup knowledge has become so widespread, right? Like podcasts like this, you get aspects of what was like a dark arts of like how to fundraise, but now like there's literally like 1,700 blog posts on how to fundraise. So I think like the service that Y Combinator provided at the time was kind of breaking down like what was not was like kind of industry secrets of how to tap into venture capital and get initial introductions and demo days, which drove scarcity value to startups, and taking some power away from investors. But now, fast forward a decade, I mean, startups are just like, we're teaching classes in universities. Like there's demo days every other weekend. Investors, I think there are probably fewer operators than investors in certain markets. Um, so I think just like every industry, I think Y Combinator blew up the VC world, reconstituted it. They made a massive brand, massive franchise, have made a lot of money. And now, what's the next level? What's the next step? And I think a lot of both operators and investors are thinking about, what is the next evolution to be competitive in this market moving forward.
So you go through Y Combinator, then what?
Yes. So our company eventually became a company called GlassMap. So we built really battery efficient technology to track mobile devices. So remember, like back there was like no location services for iOS. Meaning that if you just had your map on, like it would kill your battery. I don't remember if you guys remember like 10 years ago, like iPhone battery life is very, very weak, and just having your location on would drain your battery. So we solved that. We eventually sold that company about a year and a half into Groupon. I remember Facebook was this was around the era of social location mobile. Actually, the founder of Clubhouse was a competitor of ours. He had a company called Highlight, which is also in the social location movement space. Again, this like kind of dates me.
Was this like the Gowalla Foursquare era?
Yeah, Gowalla was so basically Gowalla and Foursquare were like active check-in location social services. We had built one of the like I guess the next generation of that, which is like passive automatic location tracking. So we were doing that. Highlight was doing that. A couple other companies were doing that. But yeah, that general era, I would say Foursquare, Gowalla were probably like a couple years before us. We had the best techs. I remember like just very, very early on the entrepreneurship journey, like Zuckerberg called us in, and like we were touring their like brand new campus because they were like doing diligence across all the different technology stacks. And one of my college CS project partners was a product manager. So we were all chatting. And I think I remember that conversation was illuminating and inspiring in some ways, because I remember like we were just bullshitting about like computers and contact lenses, right? Like just kind of like weird, like sci-fi stuff that wouldn't be out of place if like people were high in a college dorm. It just felt like, okay, like we're in the right realm of like IQ. I think a lot of folks can be intimidated for like, maybe I'm just like not smart enough, or like just literally my IQ is not big enough. And I think some of these early conversations when I was like 22, 23, like I just realized that everyone, like, if you're kind of listening to this conversation on this conversation, your IQ is there, right? Like no one's like 10 times smarter than you. They're people are probably definitely like 10, 15, 20% smarter than me, but no one's like 1,000% smarter than you. And I think that gave me a lot of confidence as a young entrepreneur. Like, okay, we're starting to be in the right rooms with the right concepts. We can grasp like the new ideas. Now it's a matter of hard work and honestly, like a lot of luck and timing, and some of the stuff that isn't just like raw IQ, which I think helps like frame the problem a little bit. Because I think a lot of people are like, hey, this is not even for me. But I think if it's like, hey, you get over that hurdle where yes, you are smart enough, and now it's a matter of like hard work, a little bit of luck, a little bit of timing, a little bit of like putting the pieces together. That makes it, I think, much more tractable for people to get started.
Yeah. So you sold your company to Groupon, right, in 2013? Yeah. And how was that? Was that a strategy, or was that an opportunity that just presented itself? Walk us through a little bit of that phase, because I think a lot of listeners who are building companies, especially in Miami right now, with everything that's going on, we're hearing a lot about tightening your belts and recession and economic downturn. People are thinking like, is there an actual opportunity? Should I recalibrate my expectations on building, a massive company here, or is this a strategic play, with another company that's well capitalized and can catapult this product, service, et cetera? Like, love to get your insights, but also your experience back then in making that decision.
Like, how do you know when to sell? Kind of.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, I think these are like the pragmatics of entrepreneurship that aren't spoken about enough. So I think one, businesses are sold, not bought. And then two, I think you really need to understand the macro environment in how to best position yourself in these kind of competitive dynamics. So I think it's almost less about you, but more about who are like the big players that may be potential acquirers and how to set yourself up in a way that looks like you are desirable to be acquired, right? Because I think like the question that having gone through an M&A is that for a business, like you either look at it, and I think in a couple different levels. At the very, very base level, it's like an acqui-hire talent pickup. I think the next level up, it's like, okay, great team, great talent, plus IP. And then next level up, great talent, great IP, great product. And then like the last, like the most cohesive asset, like, hey, this is like a business line that we want to keep and grow and scale. So I think you need to quickly realize which category you are in, and you just got to be brutally honest. If it's like you don't really have a product or business that's working, all right, like we have to like really level set how we're going to frame ourselves to a potential acquirer. Or it's like, hey, we're generating revenue, or this is like it's an asset that could be accretive to a buyer. That's like a very different conversation.
It takes self-awareness though, right? I mean, like you have to.
Yeah, you got to be honest, because like people that would be buying are gonna just look at your company, not personally in terms of your dreams and hopes and visions. Just like they're looking at a P&L balance sheet and what are we getting? Like that is their job. Like that would be, if I were in the corp dev shoe, I would be just brutally looking at, hey, like I think the backstop for a distressed acquisition, if people are going down that road, is why should people pay a premium for me or can I just wait till you run out of money and then just hire your people directly, right? Like that is like the cold hard truth. You need to have a reason why they would want to pay a premium to buy the whole asset and like return money to investors. So if it's on the distress side, you really need to have clear rationale that buying this asset, this IP, this team, and paying off our investors is like worth all that transactional headache versus like, hey, I'm gonna just kind of pick through your team and just poach your people.
So I mean, we could talk for hours about M&A and sort of like the mechanics of entrepreneurship and business creation and destruction and recreation and all these other things. But I'm really curious though, like shifting topics a little bit, like how did you go from building a location app to a human, right? Like that seems like such a great jump, right? And and it's interesting because like I was following Human like I don't know 5-6 years ago when like the whole keto and paleo trends were like sort of popping off then, and like and there was also a big move towards body hacking or whatever the term was.
Biohacking, body hacking. Yep.
Right. And so like, I mean, share with us a little bit, like, how did you go from, a software to thinking of, I don't know if it was thinking of the body as software, but like, what was that progression like?
Yeah. I mean, I think you intuited kind of our approach towards human performance. I wrote an op-ed on TechCrunch called Humans the Next Platform, which basically talks about applying engineering principles and quantitative tracking towards how to optimize yourself. And I think an analogy is that we have odometers and all these metrics on our computers, our homes, but we don't really have metrics on ourselves. So we're starting measuring.
So are you super into tracking and quantifying all these things, like quantified self stuff? Like, is that an Aura ring on your finger?
Yeah, this is an Aura ring, exactly. I mean, I think I passed on Aura's Series A because I didn't really get it at the time, and then I kind of try to make up for it by investing to levels and 8 sleep. Yeah, I like the jump. I think it was just following personal interest. So after selling GlassMap to Groupon, so just to wrap up that story a little bit, what we did was we created a competitive dynamic between Square and Groupon, and at that time, there was a big shift to build out the point of sale and wallet dynamic, right? Like mobile wallets was like a big thing at the time, and our location technology was useful to position and fix consumers to point of sales and facilitate the wallet transaction. So, we were self-aware at the time that like we didn't have like crazy traction. Like we were first a consumer social app, did not take off. Pivoted to more of an enterprise B2B play to do like ad targeting and location fixing for mobile wallets. So ended up creating a bidding dynamic between Square and Groupon. And I think that was one of the key things for fellow entrepreneurs. Like you need to have some bidding dynamic to create for your business. Otherwise, again, like the alternative for the buyer is I'll just give you the lowest possible offer. So you need a stalking horse. So that would be like the takeaway point there. But how I moved to human performance was just following personal interest. So I was relatively early in the SF kind of biohacker scene, started experimenting with intermittent fasting, keto, started like playing with measurements and yeah, like finger sticking myself in terms of tracking blood sugar. So doing all the kind of weird stuff. And I remember during that time had different like Netflix and documentary groups like just film us eating weird diets and stuff. So you can find like a Netflix documentary of me eating like raw eggs, and like we were eating like a carnivore diet, which I think is more popular now. But like 4 or 5 years ago, we were just like eating like just meat for like 4-8 weeks, just experimenting and measuring all our metrics and doing all the bloods and stool sampling. So it really was just like, I first got into the nootropics, which were cognitive enhancers. Was an entrepreneur in residence at a VC firm. So really just like talking to entrepreneurs and just hacking on random projects. So like people that I was just like doing projects with included like now a founder of a company called Blend, which is like a mortgage company in an IPO. And at the time it was like not clear that it was working. It was like super hot. So like him, Eugene, we were like hacking on apps together and some other friends that end up like, it was like kind of funny because like we didn't really know like the projects that we had would end up being public companies. But yeah, I mean, I think so like for what ended up being H.V.M.N. was a company called NutraBox. And that was just me wanting to make my own nootropic or cognitive enhancer stacks. And I was like, hey, I want this made, let's see if other people wanted it. So I just like coded up a Ruby on Rails website just to collect credit cards. And I shared it on Hacker News and a couple forums. And I think we got like 34 orders in that first day. And it was like $30 an order. So it was like $1,000 of revenue. And I was just like a completionist. I'm like, all right, I have like $1,000 of sales pre-orders. I should like fulfill it. And that just like that was literally the start. Like we had other projects kind of going on and incubating. Like that just reminds me. Remember like that app that was like a poke app or
Oh yeah.
it was just like what was that app? It was just like
Was it like a
poke.
Yo? No.
Yeah, Yo. I remember like
Yeah.
like Yo, like we're experimenting like our versions of Yo. Like it was just like we were hacking a bunch of stuff. I think our version of Yo is called Becky, and so like I think Yo was just like you sent one emoji, and I think we were just sending like that girl emoji at people. I don't know. So we're just like hacking on random ideas. But this nootropics thing just had the most legs. It was like people were buying it.
So you didn't have any physical product. You just came up with the idea and put up a landing page.
Just like thinking back on it. I mean, like it wasn't just like completely random. Like I was looking at Google Trends of like organic search terms, and nootropics was growing quite quickly. Some other ideas, like we were looking at Reddit growth sizes, like Reddit nootropics is growing quickly.
This is such an underrated way of building a company. It's like you just create the product people are looking for, right? Like it's not rocket science.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Chester from Atomic says this all the time. They're like, yeah, we just like build companies around searches. Like people are interested in something, so like there must be some early signal, and let's go from there.
Pent up demand, yeah.
there's a tool that I stumbled on the other day called Gummy Search, which lets you basically search across all these Reddit communities for like people saying like, I wish there was X, and then you can filter it down. Like anybody looking for an idea for a business, that's like a gold mine, because you could search down by like biohackers and then see what they were all saying. Like, I wish there was X,
Yep.
and so yeah, it's common sense now in hindsight for all of us, that like that's how you figure out what people actually want. But like there's a graveyard of business ideas out there, well funded and not well funded, that never thought to like do customer development and figure out what customers
Yeah.
actually want.
I think that's like the biggest lesson that I've learned in my career is just like I think, especially I think folks from potentially my background, like you just think you're smart and like you think you can predict the future and like you're just gonna build something amazing and people are gonna come get it. I think you really gotta humble yourself and just like you gotta talk to customers or like really be the customer. So I think the second part to just like tracking trends is like you gotta love the category and the space, because I think if it's just hard. Like if you think you're the super lucky person that instantly becomes a billionaire, like great, maybe you can win the lottery too, right? Like I think it's literally that level of cashing lightning in a bottle to just have instant traction, instant unicorn status. I mean, I think even if you hear these stories, I remember Evan Spiegel's Snapchat, like he was going to like parties handing out business cards with Snapchat, trying to get people to download the app for like the first couple of years because no one cared. Like the app was buggy, it didn't really work, right? So like you think of him now, like, oh wow, like Snapchat, like wow, this guy has an awesome life. It's like I don't know, like like friends were like rotating in and out. Like friends could have been like the CTO decided it was crappy, like it wasn't good, like didn't join. Like they didn't want to go to like raves and parties handing out business cards, right? Like him getting his like some of our mutual friends to go out and shill their app. So I think like you have to not just pick a growing category in space, but I think you got to just really love the category and be okay with the fact that maybe you're going to spend a lot of your best years and energy building towards something that might not work, but like you'll enjoy the journey and the community you create around you regardless. I think that's like level of passion required. And if you're going to have that passion, I think it's got to be a space that you actually have some interest in. Otherwise, you're just going to give up.
So you've had kind of a few startups under your belt, and now you've kind of gone the other direction to the dark side as an investor with Anti-Fund. Would love for you to talk a little bit about kind of the thesis of Anti-Fund and kind of how that all came about.
Yeah, I mean, we're anti-fund because we want to be not dark side. So my partner with Anti-Fund is Jake Paul, who is a top combat sports athlete and made a bunch of Forbes lists this past year. But I think to me, he represents a iconoclast, a rebel, a creator, a founder. And I think we resonated because we wanted to create a fund, a culture where we break kind of the standard rules of being a VC, where I think a lot of financial focused investors look at startups as commodity, as a P&L, as like, growth, revenue growth, margin, and valuation, and let's trade you around and talk about companies and founders like horses.
Yeah, a means to a return.
Yeah, which is fine, right? Like we're in the system of making money, but I think where we like to play is that a lot of the money in Anti-Fund is mine and Jake's own money. So we really just see it as like building a tribe of people cut in similar cloths as us, people that are pioneers, visionaries, want to create the future, and we want to power, fund and back and support people that are creating technologies, products that we want to see ourselves in the future. So in that sense, we really see ourselves as like advisors, confidants of the founder CEOs, and help. And I think the second part is like just be very complementary in terms of the cap table. Like having been on the other side, being an operator, I think there's like two things that I realized that I really appreciate from investors. One is a notion that we care a lot about is value add to dollar dilution ratio. Like if you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, some of like the biggest checks are the least valuable and the smallest checks are most valuable. And you dive into that notion a little bit deeper with a lot of funds. There's LPs and GPs, and LPs own 80% of the carry, where the GPs own 20% of the carry. And for a large fund, maybe the partner you're working with is, 10% of the GP pool. So 10% of 20% is 2%. So their $1 million check, the person that you're actually working with is equivalent to a $20,000 angel check from that person, right? If you just do the math of like the actual economic upside for that individual. So when you like break down the business of VC, you have $20,000 of that person's, your partner's skin in the game, and $980,000 of LPs who maybe don't even know that they're invested in you. So when you realize those kind of economics, it really kind of changes how you think about your cap table and like the types of people that you want to have invest in your company. And then two, I think for a lot of businesses, and I think as a founder myself, I just want investors to add to my network, because I think to be investable, you really should be a domain expert. Like if I'm as an investor, I'm telling you like micromanaging you, like that's the wrong business, right? I'm not a private equity buyout firm. I'm not investing and then telling you what to do, right? That's a Vista Equity. That's a Thoma Bravo thing. I'm like, we literally know that like our biggest value add is to be awesome cheerleaders. And I think we can be really good cheerleaders because our network of celebrities, athletes, folks that might not normally be on a tech company start cap table, like we can amplify the message much better than a lot of like your classic VCs. Because at the end of the day, like the entrepreneur and the product and the team is the fundamental thing that matters. Everything else is an amplification. So we're a multiplier off of you, and that's honestly what VC should be thought of, right? They're an amplification of something that's working. If you're looking for investors like fix your company, like you're doing the wrong thing, right? I wouldn't invest in you.
So tell us a little bit about some of the companies you all have invested in, and we want to shift over to Miami to wrap things up.
Yeah. I think some of the most exciting categories for us were crypto metaverse projects. So we were very, very active last year, backed some of the biggest metaverse projects. Again, I think our value add or interest there is like, we see that as an inevitable part of the future, and can we help translate the technology into real consumers? And then secondly, an exciting area that I think, it nicely segues into just broader Miami, Florida ecosystem is getting very deeply involved and excited about the sports betting space. So backed one of now a good friend and business partner, Joey Levy's company, Simple Bet, which powers micro betting or betting per moment in sports games. So they power DraftKings in-play betting. So 30% of all of the Super Bowl betting volume on DraftKings came from Simple Bet's service. So spending a lot of time thinking about how can machine learning and sports and new consumer experiences, how do we create like the future of sporting experiences as like another category and area that we're excited about.
That's awesome. Now you moved to Miami. You no longer live in Silicon Valley. Do you love it here?
Yeah, I do.
All right, that's a wrap.
That's all we need. When did you move? Give him a bit more context.
I moved a year and a half ago, so February 2021. And it wasn't like, I wasn't really even looking to move. So really the story was that during the pandemic, I thought I was gonna be like a ranch person. I spent a lot of time in Montana. It was great to get open. Like SF was very dark. There was like the fires. There was like the the Orange Day, where like the entire city was like out of a Blade Runner movie.
That was epic. And
It was
everyone
like
was
a very
like,
surreal year.
everyone was taking refuge in their Tesla because of air filters.
Yeah, seriously. But one of my good friends, he was renting a suite at the W South Beach, and he had an extra bedroom. And I just like, he's like, hey, I have an extra bedroom, just come crash. And he had the CEO of a company called Ramp, which is a fast-growing credit card company, and another like fast-growing database company staying there. And it was supposed to be a weekend trip, turned into like a month-long, like wow, like Miami is alive, it's open. I literally saw like more Silicon Valley people in South Beach and then I saw the last year in San Francisco. Like people were coming through doing deals, chopping it up. Kygo's Palm Tree Crew was hosting a party, and that was actually like where I reconnected with Jake Paul. Like we were just all in town. He was setting up a camp, his boxing camp in Miami from Calabasas. So it just like felt like a very, very magical moment where people were in town, people were open to meet, people were open to network, people were like just optimistic. And I think like the best way I describe Miami to folks who like don't get it or just like thinking about it, it really feels like America in the sense of like optimism, fearlessness, like building businesses. Where I feel like a lot of other parts of the country are like not very optimistic. So yeah, and I think it's like if you talk to like a San Francisco person, they're like, "Oh, what do you think of SF?" They're like, I don't know, it's okay." But like, I think it's like awesome when people like love Miami. I don't know if I'm like the biggest. I'm not usually super exuberant, but like I just can't help it when people are like, people who have moved here just love it, and it's like cool. Like that makes me like want to pump the Miami, horn because like people are happy.
Have you recruited people to move to Miami and or companies that you've invested in where you're giving them a bit of a nudge on the move?
Yeah, I mean, we've had employees, team members move from California. I don't like hard selling. Like I think it's a very easy place to like. Like I don't mind the hot weather. Like it's great to be able to just wear shorts and t-shirt like all year round. People complain about if it's like super hot, and it's like I don't know. There's air conditioning. Like I'm not like I don't know. We're on the computer all the time anyway, so I don't know what you're complaining about. But all jokes aside, I think Miami's a very easy city to like. I can complain that maybe it's a little bit too loud, maybe the restaurant's a little bit too much like clubs. But look, like I think overall, just the optimism and the energy and people willing to like meet up and support each other, I think is world class, and it feels like what America's all about, and what I think early Silicon Valley was like. Just people excited to like share ideas and be optimistic about the future rather than pessimistic.
Like, did the weird cultural idiosyncrasies and stuff and quirks of Miami get to you? Because like I had someone from SF complain to me that like people eat dinner too late here in Miami, and I was like, really? That's what your like your hang up is? Like okay.
Like, how about you should eat earlier, right? Like it's what an odd way to kind of rank cities. Like I don't know.
I don't know. I've just grown to like my kind of Miami nightlife kind of oriented folks. I've gotten close to Mark Roberts, who's a big real estate guy. He's actually quite an active crypto and tech investor. But yeah, he is a co-owner of 11, which is like, a popular club. And I don't know, it's just like, in some sense, like, I think it like the fact that you can like do business and then go to like a super club all within like the same like social circles just shows that like the Overton window of what's possible in Miami is just like much broader. And I think that's just generally healthy. Like you want people from that enjoy all types of different experiences, not being afraid to like celebrate and enjoy like their lifestyles in whatever way they want. Where I felt like Silicon Valley was like very like the best things about what people like to do in San Francisco was like literally go to Tahoe, like go ski, or like go to Napa, like literally things outside of the city, which I thought was like very funny.
Right.
Or like Miami, it's like there's a lot to do, and I think it's like also like very open. You can like like do a hackathon, or do any kind of low key thing, and there's like great natural beauty, or go to like kind of like the craziest parties you ever want to go to. And I think that optionality is awesome.
Yeah, I remember. I feel like when things first started taking off 2 years ago here, where a lot of folks were moving, some of the counter arguments was like, oh, there's too much distraction. You basically need to live in a city that sucks so that you are not tempted to do anything but just sit at home and build. And I just thought that was just a really weird way of looking at things. Like, and I think what people enjoy here is like when you do take a break, you really enjoy that break, and it recharges you and kind of fuels you to go
Yeah, and I
back.
think that's a weak argument, because like if you're gonna be that distracted, and you're not gonna make it anyways,
Right,
right? It's like it's just like, come on, like
Also,
if you
you
really want to
just
get into trouble, you can get into trouble anywhere, right? So I don't buy that argument.
and you just described like an office, like just work all day in an office if you want no distractions. I mean,
Yeah, which is very easy, right? Like it's like honestly, that's like mostly what I do, right? It's like, but like the fact that like people think you can be like enjoying an awesome life and not working by the fact that like you can post like a couple of clips on like a weekend, and the people think that's awesome, is like almost shows like the breadth of kind of the lifestyles you can have in Miami.
all
Or
right,
like you
Jeff.
can be grinding like most of the time. And
Favorite neighborhood in Miami, and then we wrap.
I like I don't know, Wynwood Design District. Like a cool mix of grittiness and interesting food and shopping, and like good vibes.
Perfect. Geoffrey Woo, thank you so much for joining, man. This was a great conversation. It flew by. We really appreciate your story and your insights here. Don't be a stranger. You're always welcome back on the Miami Tech Pod, man.
Awesome. Yeah, fun conversation.
Great. This was episode 64, everyone. We'll be back next week with a really exciting guest. Make sure to, it's been a while that we've asked, but make sure to give us some love on Twitter at Miami Tech Pod, and we'll be with you next week.